Okay, we're live.
Hello, everyone. This is the India group. Our group members are Matthew Cushing, Jesse Alfrey, Zach Stevens, and Spencer Ringel. And we are presenting on launching a new product in India. Here we see a comparison between India and the United States in the 6 Hofstede cultural dimensions. Clearly, the two countries differ in multiple of the cultural dimensions, but the two most important dimensions for us to look at are the indulgence dimension and the power distance dimension. The indulgence dimension has a large impact on consumer behavior. India's indulgence score is much lower than that of the United States, so natives of India are less likely to spend money for fun. If we select a product that meets a need, this won't be an issue. Regarding power distance, India's high score means that they are used to a more profound hierarchy system than is found in the United States. This also wouldn't be an issue as long as we operated in India in a manner that was comfortable for the natives.
Okay. Here we see a few things that are important to know in going into business with the Indian people. For them, less is more. So when you say a few words, they're going to read your body language and your facial expressions and get a lot more out of it than what you're actually saying. As far as giving feedback, you see the velvet hammer there. They like to cushion the blow. So when you're giving someone advice on how they can get better, they like it to be softened up a little bit. They are a non-confrontational society. So when team members disagree, they see that as having a negative impact on the team and on the group, which can cause some issues if in business with them. And then the last is flexible scheduling. So there's not very much structure in how they do things. It's not a step-by-step process, but they could do one step and then jump to another further on, which can be a little frustrating and hard to get used to for someone from the United States who's from a more structured country. In negotiations in India, it's all about the relationship. So you can't just go and jump right into the deal. You'll need to get to know them, build some trust and build a relationship. One place said that it's good to even bring family pictures to kind of show them, and possibly a gift maybe the second time. But don't expect to get into negotiations until late into the first visit or into the second even. So another important thing is understand religions and culture. So for example, some religions there will see the left hand as unclean. So it would be inappropriate to give someone something with the left hand. Don't rush them by saying, oh, this is the best offer, or you're only going to have this offer for this amount of time. They like to sit back and think about things. And another thing is they're a little deceptive. So it's good to not buy into their relationships, into their responses. So even if they're saying yes, they may be thinking no. And that can be very confusing for someone from the United States. And that's kind of goes with what they do with handshakes and contracts. So even after a contract is signed, they can't expect changes, whereas we see that as a binding agreement.
For the Economic Freedom Index, what this does for us is it breaks it down into 4 categories that measure countries on the world stage on a fair setting, to really show us how the freedom of our economy is working globally. And those areas are rule of law, government size, regulatory efficiency, and open markets. And we'll cover this on the next slide, where we talk about India and their economic freedom. And looking at the snapshot, we can see their world rank is 129 out of about 186 countries. And then you can see the 4 categories broken up there and about how they're doing for this last year that they were measured. A couple positives that we pulled out of this. One, their government integrity has shown some improvement, and their fiscal health has definitely shown some improvement, which would bode well for our business, ensuring that we can deal with a trustworthy government, fairly trustworthy government, and be financially sound. Just a couple concerns lie with the investment and business sectors. Although it does show that the business freedom has improved slightly, there is still a lot of things that plague their business setting with laws and regulations that typically extend the time for a startup to be 2 or 3 times longer than what we might be used to in the US. So it's important that we note those concerns. The other thing that's important to look at with India is the free trade agreements that they currently enjoy. Some of the most prominent ones are the ASEAN, which is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and then the Mercosur, which is their Southern Common Market in Spanish. And they've also got preferential trade agreements with Bangladesh, China, South Korea, and Sri Lanka, which are all great for our business when we are looking to establish locally and import locally instead of further from that.
When it comes to federal direct investment, India seems to be a strong candidate for our company. There have been several reforms recently that have centralized their economy and helped them to grow and become a good nation for companies to invest. Some incentives that they have are a very highly specialized English-speaking and inexpensive workforce. There are over 1 billion people in the country, and this gives us a large workforce that we can work with in order to manufacture our goods and invest into that country without having to pay some of the higher rates for labor. With that comes some restrictions. There's a number of prohibited sectors that won't really affect our work, but if we were to want to try and to get into some gambling or even into some agricultural industries, those are highly regulated and localized. They also have a large number of most favored nation trade tariffs, and navigating those and trying to avoid the most tariffs as possible can be difficult. However, they do provide many aid programs such as tax holidays, tax concessions, and importation of goods at concessional customs duty. These allow companies to avoid some of those importation taxes and to get their goods within the company or within the country at a lower cost. They also have an automatic approval rate for FDI, which speeds the process along, and along with some tax avoidance policies. I think that these policies and these incentives greatly outweigh the restrictions. Continuing on a little bit more about the political structure of India. They have a federal government structure that's very similar to other Western nations like Great Britain, France, and Australia. It's broken down into 3 branches. The executive branch, which is made up of the president, vice president, and prime minister. Then you have a legislative branch, which has 2 parliamentary bodies, a higher parliamentary body and a lower. And then the judiciary branch, which is separated into 3 courts, a supreme, a high, and then district courts. The state government is very similar to those, except they do not have a judiciary element to them. The government recently has gone through several reforms that have made India a destination for foreign companies. They have made reforms that have made the process of forming your country or your company simpler and expedited. And they have also been working towards making the economy a positive place for foreign investment. The only thing that we might have to consider coming up is the 2019 general elections for the higher body of parliament. They'll be in April and May, and depending on how it goes, there are 7 different major parties within the country, and not all of them are business friendly. And so we will have to consider that moving forward.
Okay, so here we're going to take a look at a few charts showing the economic indicators in India and what they've been doing. The first one is the gross national income with the purchase power parity. So basically that's comparing their power to buy things to the US dollar using obviously the US dollar as the baseline. It's gone up the last 5 years, which is a good sign. It's still a little more than a tenth of what the United States is at. So there's a lot of work there. As far as the GDP growth percentage on the right side there, some years have seen some very significant growth. In 2017, it was up 14.36%, with $2.6 trillion being done. So in 2015, there wasn't quite as much improvement, but as you can see, that has been going up year after year. The annual inflation rate is right there on the left. As inflation goes up, the currency will decrease. And in 2017, it got down to 3.3%. But in 2013, it was up over 10. So they're kind of starting to get it under control, and their currency's holding a little more value, which is a good sign. As a comparison, the U.S. has been at about 2% or lower. And on the right side, we see lending rates and their percentage. These are the loans given to prime customers, and right now in 2017 it was at 9.51%, and it was up over 10. It's continually decreased over the last few years, which is nice, especially for a business that might need some additional funds. A high interest rate is something that can be hard to overcome.
In this chart, we see that the rupee has been stuck in a decline in value compared to the dollar for the past 5 years. Some of the reason for this is that India imports around 80% of the fuel it consumes, and the rising crude oil prices hurt the value of the rupee. United States GDP has also increased lately, strengthening the dollar and increasing the difference in value between the two currencies. We need to be careful when dealing with the foreign exchange rate. Using forward exchange contracts can help us avoid missing out on profits because of unforeseen changes in the exchange rate as we do our business.
So our first business idea was renewable energy, mainly solar energy. This would help India, and well, they have one of the highest populations in the world and a very high demand for energy. So a renewable source would be something very helpful for them in making it affordable as well for their people. They have a lot of government initiatives to move renewable energy forward. It's mostly been done commercially, and they have a goal by 2040 to have 49% of their energy come from a renewable source. There is a lot of sun in India, a lot of direct, intense sun, so it's a great place for solar energy. Currently, there's one company that's done most of any residential work, which is where we would be focused, is more in the residential area, since there's been a decent amount done already commercially. It's called Orb Energy. They've done about 100,000 homes, and they've been there since 2006. So there's a lot of opportunity and untapped potential there to get into the residential market and explain to people how renewable energy will be beneficial to them.
On our second product, we have the water purification system. For India, their current state, residential waste is very high. The discipline is lacking to manage that waste, which creates contaminated water in several areas, which creates sicknesses all over the country. And another issue is their water sources are drying up. So what we would propose is to develop a water purification system that is low cost and can be nationally offered to all the residential areas that's affordable for them. And we would also partner with nonprofits to where we could actually reach more communities in rural areas and get our name out there for branding. And one of the companies that is very well known within the country now is the AquaGuard Advantage company. And they do quite a bit of work already, but there's a lot of things that we can do to help India.
Our third product idea is a healthcare system that is functionable through a downloadable application that consumers can download, use in their homes, that also pairs with our monitors and cameras and the software that we sell to doctors' offices and other medical facilities. Consumers can input symptoms and health concerns into the application, which will then give them a diagnosis and possible remedies. Additionally, if things are severe enough, they can be able to video chat with a doctor who can then diagnose them in a more personal way. There are not very many competitors in this sort of a field. Some competitors have software in doctors' offices, but don't pair with the video chat option. And so we could create a competitive advantage by contracting with these medical field offices to gain that competitive advantage. And that is the end of our presentation. Thank you for your time and attention. That is all.